All right. So this Macon, so I know, and you do the Macon Village, you do a Pouilly-Fuissé. What other whites are in the portfolio?
That's about it. Like the Macon Village and Pouilly-Fuissé, there's already a lot of things to do within these two appellations. In Pouilly-Fuissé, for example, we have our historic domain of the Duboeuf family, le Clos Ressier. We acquired some domains also in the village of Chantrey, part of Pouilly-Fuissé appellation. And we work with some small family domains like the Bois Rosier or Domaine Béranger in the Pouilly-Fuissé appellation. So we're trying to have Pouilly-Fuissé from different terroirs of the appellation. And as you know, as you may know, we're soon going to have some Premier Crus in Pouilly-Fuissé. So we're very excited about it.
And when is that about? Do you know what the date is and when that's going to take place? Or
so if I'm correct, we're set to start with the 2020 vintage, and we'll see our first Premier Cru. We're lucky enough to have some of our vineyards to be designated Premier Cru. So it's in the making now. Of course, it's a little fresh because we haven't bottled the 2020 yet as we speak, but that's in the next few months or years. You'll see some Premier Crus from Pouilly-Fuissé.
So I have to ask, having been to France a few times and knowing how things can get in France, how political was that process? Was it to get Premier Cru status?
It's let's say it's part of the French tradition to fight for the Premier Cru, but honestly, it's based on the vineyard itself, of the quality of the wine, the proven track of quality for many years. So it's always a little bit political, but at the end, I think it made sense for Pouilly-Fuissé to have some Premier Cru. While you go up to Côte Chalonnaise, they already have Premier Cru. They have had Premier Cru for many years. Not talking about Côte de Beaune or Côte de Nuit. So it was about time to have some Premier Cru in Mâconnais, because I think the appellations deserve it, and it's excellent wines.
Do you ever see something like that coming a little further south down in to the Beaujolais Cru region, or is that pretty well set and pretty much established that that's the way it's going to be?
It's ever evolving. If you look at, for example, Beaujolais, if you look, years ago, we didn't have 10 crus, and that's when Régnier became the 10th cru. So that's always something that can change. For example, some villages that are now part of Beaujolais Village want to become Cru Beaujolais. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. And I think because of the quality of Beaujolais, and especially some specific climat or terroir or sub-appellation within the Cru Beaujolais, we deserve some Premier Cru. But if we are not Premier Cru, at least we can have some lieu-dit or climat. For example, one we're going to taste today, the Côte du Py in Morgon.
So that's a good segue. Why don't we move on into our next wine, as you mentioned, right. Beaujolais Village. So this is under the Georges Duboeuf Flower Label series, which is different from the Domaine and Chateau, which we'll talk about a little later. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about this Beaujolais Village? So it's a 2019. That's the current vintage. You said the 20s aren't bottled yet. So how was the 2019 vintage in general? And then let's talk a little bit about this wine in particular.
What's great in Beaujolais is that, at least in the last 10 years, we have been blessed with good vintage, exceptional vintage. So basically, it's either good or very good or excellent. We didn't really have a bad on off vintage in the last 10 years. So 2019
it was really starting with like 2009, wasn't it? I mean, that was like the first great vintage.
2009 was spectacular. So just to give you an idea, Georges Duboeuf said at the time, it's the vintage of a lifetime.
Right.
And then came 2015, and he said, okay, maybe I wasn't right. 2015 is is close or even better than 09. And then we had also 18, 20 is going to be fantastic as well. 19 is very good. What I like about 2019 is that it's typical of Beaujolais. We had a very late start of the season because it was a very cold and wet spring. So we were a bit worried at the time, but then we had an incredible heat wave in July, accelerating the ripening and the growing cycle of the vine. So very hot summer overall. And then, at the end, we landed right where we wanted to be. We had good acidity, good tannins. It was very balanced, a little fresher than some vintages that are a little more solar, like 18. So I really like 19 because it's a great expression of what Beaujolais is all about. That's fruitiness, freshness, and balance.